A cop pulls over a 72-year-old black man for drifting. But when he hands over his ID, the officer freezes. Why did the system lock down? Why did Homeland Security say, "Do not engage"? And who is this man that even history books forgot? This wasn't just a traffic stop. It was the moment the past refused to stay buried. If this story surprises you, like the video and subscribe for more real, untold truths. The heat settled over Bakersfield like a thick wool blanket, heavy, unrelenting, and dry enough to crack pavement. Ezekiel Zeke Harmon, 72 years old, kept the windows of his 1985 Buick Regal halfway down. Not enough for dust, just enough for air. The old V8 engine purred steady beneath the hood, and the soft crackle of a jazz station drifted from the dashboard. He just left the cemetery. Same flowers. Same routine. He didn't talk to the stone, not really. Just stood there, hat in hand, letting the silence settle around the name Clarice Harmon, beloved wife, gone 6 years now. Zeke wasn't in a rush. He never was. The Regal coasted down Route 202, hugging the faded yellow line, chrome glinting in the sunlight. The interior still smelled faintly of old leather and lemon oil. Clarice used to joke it was his second wife. But then, red and blue lights flashed in his rearview. Zeke blinked once. A long, slow blink. Then tapped the turn signal and pulled off into a gravel patch near an abandoned gas station. No sidewalks, no shade. The patrol cruiser rolled in behind him. Doors stayed closed for a few seconds, long enough for curiosity to ripple. A pickup truck passed, slowed. A silver SUV idled across the road, the driver leaning forward, watching. A few phones were up now, recording, zooming, but no one got out. No one said a word. Zeke kept both hands on the wheel. His hat still rested low over his gray-lined forehead. He didn't look over until he heard the voice. "Afternoon, sir," said Officer D. Sandoval, not yet 30, mirrored sunglasses hiding his eyes, the uniform crisp, the posture tight. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Zeke didn't flinch. "No, sir, but I'm sure you'll explain." There was no challenge in his tone, just certainty. "You were drifting over the center line back there," Sandoval said. "Had to make sure you weren't impaired or in distress." "I'm fine," Zeke replied, voice level. "Just driving." He reached slowly toward the glove compartment. No sudden movements, retrieved his license, registration. Then a third card tucked in a laminated sleeve, its edges frayed with time, black background, gold trim, no expiration date. He handed all three over. Sandoval took them. He glanced once at the license, again at the registration. Then he paused, held that third card longer, looked at it again. His posture changed. Not much, but Zeke caught it. A twitch at the corner of the mouth. A shift in the stance. The air around them didn't get any cooler. Zeke kept both hands on the wheel and waited. Zeke Harmon didn't believe in rushing. He believed in rhythm, in the click of a turn signal, in the soft rub of rubber soles against old floorboards, in routine, the kind you build when everything else in life has come undone. Every Wednesday, without fail, he made the drive. From his modest 2-bedroom house on the edge of Bakersfield, past the post office, past the cotton fields, past the boarded-up diner where Clarice once insisted they get pie even when they were running late. And every Wednesday he brought her flowers, hydrangeas if they had them, sunflowers when they didn't. He never lingered long, just enough to smooth the grass, adjust the edges of the stone, and murmur something soft, something only the wind could hear. Today was no different. He wore what he always wore, blue plaid shirt, sleeves rolled twice up the arm, neat trousers, belt cinched just right. His cap was faded but clean. It rested low across his brow, casting a steady shadow over eyes that had seen enough to stop blinking at nonsense. The Buick Regal, 1985, cream-colored with chrome trim, was spotless. Clarice used to tease him, called it his other baby. Said she should have been jealous of the way he waxed those bumpers. But she understood him, understood that a man like Zeke, quiet, private, deliberate, didn't always have the words, so he polished, he fixed. He showed love by preserving what still ran smooth. Zeke didn't speak much, but when he did, people listened. He'd been here before, not this exact roadside, not this exact heat, but this feeling. That pause in a young man's step, that doubt in someone's voice. That thin film of suspicion that seemed to coat everything he touched, no matter how careful he moved. He wasn't surprised by flashing lights. He wasn't rattled by uniforms. He knew what they thought they saw, but what they never saw was what sat beneath the silence. And today, someone might. 1969, South Carolina. The humidity was thick enough to soak your collar before you hit the second step of the science building. Zeke remembered that day like a still frame, the chalk on his fingers, the hum of a busted ceiling fan, the moment the man in the gray suit tapped twice on the classroom door and said, "Ezekiel Harmon," a word. He was 22, studying electrical engineering at a small, historically black college no one outside the state ever talked about. He kept his head down, turned in his work early, spoke when spoken to, and somehow they noticed. The man in the suit never said military or government, didn't mention clearance or danger, just that there was a program, that they were looking for minds like his, minds that wouldn't attract cameras, minds that the newspapers wouldn't follow. That's how Project Horizon began. It wasn't on maps, didn't have a logo. The building they worked in didn't have a sign. But underground, beneath a decommissioned weather station outside Norfolk, Virginia, Zeke and 13 others, all black, all engineers, all invisible, built things the public wouldn't hear about for decades. They designed encrypted long-range radio relays, the kind that could keep units in Uganda and Turkey talking without detection. They built signal scrubbers, prototype firewalls, untraceable transmission lines. They worked 16-hour days, ate from vending machines, slept on cots in shifts, and when something succeeded it was reported upward, never outward. No plaques bore their names, no generals shook their hands. Zeke didn't even have a formal title, just a badge number, and later a black and gold ID with a classification so high most systems today still flag it and freeze. By 1976 the program ended, records sealed, personnel scattered. Most of them disappeared into desk jobs, private contracts, or silence. Zeke chose silence, not because he was afraid, but because no one wanted the truth from a man like him. They wanted his brilliance, not his name, and after a while he stopped offering it. Officer D. Sandoval held the worn military ID a little too long. The gold trim had dulled over time, the black laminate creased near the corner, but the numbers, crisp, etched with something that felt more permanent than plastic. He blinked, looked at Zeke, then back at the card. "Wait here," he said, voice tighter now. Zeke didn't reply, didn't move, just rested both hands back on the wheel. The sun pressed in through the windshield, hot enough to sting the forearms. Sandoval walked briskly to his cruiser. He opened the door too fast, dropped into the seat, and started typing into the system. The license cleared, the registration cleared. Then he entered the code from the black and gold ID. His screen froze, not stalled, locked. Then the browser closed itself. A black screen blinked once. Red text, restricted access, contact primary clearance line immediately. Below it, a phone number, no agency, no name, no instructions, just a blinking cursor. Sandoval leaned back in his seat, heart thudding. He stared at the phone number. He didn't dial it. Instead, he reached for the radio clip to his chest. "Dispatch, this is Officer D. Sandoval, badge 4821. I need Captain Renner at my location. Now." A pause, then static. Then, "What's going on, Sandoval?" "I'm at East 202 and Ridgeview. Ran an ID. Something's not right. I think we've got something big." Behind him, the scene had started to swell. A young woman in gym clothes had stepped out of her SUV and was filming now, narrating softly. "Looks like they've pulled over an old man. Cops look nervous." A delivery driver slowed his van and leaned out the window. The air had changed. People could feel it. Back in the Buick, Zeke sat like stone, not defiant, not angry, just there. When Sandoval finally stepped back toward the car, he wasn't walking with the same stiffness as before. His sunglasses were off now. He stopped at the window, swallowed hard. "Mr. Harmon," he said, "do you mind stepping out of the vehicle?" Zeke turned his head, voice calm. "Am I being arrested?" "No, sir, nothing like that. I need to verify something." Zeke looked forward again. You said I was swerving. You've got my license, my registration, my military ID. I haven't raised my voice. I haven't refused a thing. Am I being detained? Sandoval hesitated. No, sir. Then I'll stay right here. The sound of a phone camera clicking nearby cut through the silence. Zeke didn't flinch. The heat sat on East 202 like a warning, thick, unmoving, and loud in its silence. Even the breeze had stopped trying. Dust hung still in the air like suspended time. Engines idled. Radios whispered. But no one dared speak louder than the sun. The school bus that had creaked to a stop moments ago remained frozen in the lane behind Zeke's Buick. Inside, kids pressed their faces to the glass, wide-eyed and whispering. Then the door wheezed open. One little girl, no older than 8, stepped down without a word. Her pink backpack swayed behind her as she walked onto the shoulder. She stood there alone, staring at the man in the car, the man who hadn't moved. A murmur rippled through the bystanders. He's not doing anything. Why won't they let him go? This don't feel right. Phones were still recording, but the air was shifting, not loud, not angry, just turning. A black SUV approached fast from the west, lights flashing discreetly behind the windshield. Tires crunched gravel as it pulled up behind the cruiser. Captain Renner stepped out tall, broad, bald, his squint carved from years of desert sun. He didn't say a word at first, just surveyed the scene, the crowd, the man in the car. Then he motioned Sandoval toward him. Their conversation was low, tight. Renner's brow furrowed. His eyes flicked toward the ID still sitting on the passenger seat of the cruiser. Sandoval whispered something. Renner's jaw clenched. He pressed a finger to his earpiece, listening, more silence. Then a single command from the earpiece, too quiet for anyone else to hear. Stand down, do not engage further, await clearance. Renner stepped forward slowly, cautiously, stopped at Zeke's window. Mr. Harmon, he said, voice flatter than before. Would you be willing to step out of the vehicle? Zeke turned to look at him, calm, still, measured. I've already been asked. And I've already answered. Renner swallowed. There's no threat, sir, just protocol. Zeke looked past him to the sky now beginning to blush gold at the edges, then to the little girl still standing near the ditch, quiet, unmoving. You don't need to fear me, son, he said, not loud but clear. You just need to learn how to treat people. Renner didn't reply, and the silence that followed was heavier than heat. Captain Renner cleared his throat. Mind if we talk over here? Zeke looked at him, not suspicious, just tired. I don't mind, he said, unbuckling his seatbelt. I never had much use for hiding anyway. They walked slowly toward the grassy shoulder, past the whispering crowd, past the little girl who hadn't moved an inch. Sandoval stayed close, arms crossed over his chest, eyes down, still listening. Renner didn't waste time. Mr. Harmon, I've worn a badge for 23 years. I've never seen an ID lock down our system like that. Homeland contacted us directly. No explanation, just told us your name carries weight. Zeke nodded once. I figured they might still be watching. Renner hesitated. I guess what I'm asking is, what were you part of? Zeke looked out across the dusty fields, wide, quiet, golden in the fading sun. He exhaled. You ever heard of Project Horizon? Renner shook his head. Wasn't supposed to, Zeke said softly. Most weren't. He sat down slowly on the edge of the ditch. Not because he was tired, but because this was a story that needed sitting. I was recruited out of South Carolina in '69. HBCU no one knew. They needed engineers, quiet ones, ones the press wouldn't follow. We weren't supposed to be seen, just used. He looked at Sandoval. We built long-range comms, encrypted networks, early firewalls, stuff they now call groundbreaking, except back then we just called it surviving. He listed names, Rufus McLean, Sylvia Ginn, Elijah Morrill. None of them rang any bells. They should have been in textbooks, Zeke said, but they weren't even in footnotes. Renner said nothing. Sandoval slowly sat on the grass nearby, his hand no longer near his belt, just listening. Zeke folded his hands. I wasn't the smartest one there, I wasn't the fastest, but I made it out. I lived long enough to still be talking. Just then a soft voice broke through the stillness. It was the little girl, now standing a few feet away. Are you famous? She asked. Zeke looked at her, and for the first time that day his face broke into a gentle smile. No, baby, he said, just forgot. No one replied. They didn't need to. The truth had already landed and it stayed where it fell. The video hit the internet before the sun finished setting. A woman in a red sweatshirt had filmed the whole thing, from the flashing lights to the stillness in Zeke's voice, to the moment he said, "You just need to learn how to treat people." She posted it under the title, "The Man History Forgot." By midnight, it had over 700,000 views. By morning, it was everywhere. Clips were spliced, reposted, set to slow piano music. Comment sections overflowed. How many more Zekes are out there? This man built the systems we rely on. Why isn't this in a textbook? A few users deep in military history forums began piecing together pieces of Project Horizon. Old declassified documents, redacted names, diagrams that matched Zeke's descriptions. A retired Air Force signal officer simply replied, "Confirmed." Nothing more, but it was enough. In Bakersfield, things shifted quietly. At Franklin High School, history teacher Mr. Rowe printed out the transcript of Zeke's words and handed it to his seniors. "Tomorrow," he said, "we're going to talk about the people who should have been in your textbooks." One girl raised her hand and said, "I was on that bus. I saw him." The class went still. And Officer Sandoval, he didn't get suspended, didn't quit, but something in him changed. He stopped leaning into his badge, stopped talking over people at the diner. He started attending community meetings, sat in the back, never spoke, just listened. At traffic stops, he took a beat before reaching for his notepad. He looked longer at eyes, not just actions. A week later, he passed Zeke outside the post office. He paused, took off his sunglasses, and tipped his head. "Still learning, sir," he said. Zeke nodded. "Keep going." No fanfare, no press conferences, just a doormat. Someone no one ever said who left a brand new welcome mat at Zeke's front door. Thick, clean, simple, etched with one word, respect. No note, no explanation. Just a quiet act for a man who had waited decades to be seen. Drive home was the same. Same stretch of cracked pavement. Same faded barns leaning into the wind. Same old radio humming low with jazz, soft enough to let the quiet breathe. But somehow the road felt different. No honking, no rush. Cars behind Zeke gave him space. The sun dipped behind the hills in slow motion, casting long shadows that didn't feel heavy this time, just gentle. At the corner where he used to get the occasional scowl for driving too slow, a teenager on a bike gave him a nod. It was subtle, small, but Zeke noticed. He turned down the gravel lane to his house, tires rolling smooth between the lines he always kept straight, the same way Clarice liked it. The front porch welcomed him like it always had, with the faint creak of old wood and the low scent of pine oil rising through the floorboards. Inside, the house exhaled with him. No noise. Just the birds chirping near the window and the soft crackle of jazz from the kitchen radio. He poured himself a glass of water. Sat in the chair facing west. Looked out across the field where the wind moved slow. He didn't need headlines, didn't need statues, didn't even need the country to say thank you. Because today someone had looked at him, really looked, and didn't see a stereotype. They saw a man, a builder, a mind, a witness, and for Zeke Harmon that was enough. He sipped his water, let the silence settle, and for the first time in a long, long while he felt seen, not by history, not by the system, but by the present, and that was peace. Not every war is loud. Not every hero wears a medal, and not every legacy makes it into the books, but every person you pass in a grocery line, at a red light, in an old car on a back road carries a story you do know, a battle they've already fought, a contribution they were never thanked for. If this story made you pause, share it, not for the clicks, not for the comments, for truth, because someone out there, quiet, steady, waiting, is still being overlooked, still being doubted. Still hoping someone will finally see them. Let this be a reminder: silence isn't insignificance, and dignity doesn't need permission.